back. We've got another explainer coming in from Jill Lawrence this time. Jill, thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. You have an interesting piece in the Bulwark this week about the kind of autocratic nature of what Trump is building in the structure of the GOP itself, and how that kind of reflects his business practices, what it looked like in the world of Trump org. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you see him doing in the Republican Party, and what that kind of means for the country writ large?
Well, I was really triggered by a Washington Post collection of stories right at the top of their homepage of their phone app, just kind of crystallizing the whole focus on his control of the not just his family but Republican politics and ultimately in his dreams the country. And so there was this what I call an excruciatingly transactional account of him asking for $1 billion from oil CEOs and what he'd do in return. The debut of his youngest son Barron as a delegate to the Republican convention, and the influence he's having over top Republicans, including the lineup trying to be his VP, to reject the results of not just the 2020 election, but the 2024 election if he doesn't win. So it's this constellation of things against, and then we have in the foreground, I was going to say against the backdrop, but it's really kind of the foreground of the hush money slash election interference campaign finance trial in New York, where the workings of the family business are laid bare. And it is really striking, or it was to me, how much this resembles the dictionary definition of autocracy. And not just the way it was in 2020, but more and more, even with Barron's mother pulling the plug on his participation in the convention. We still have just enormous family influence, everything in a tight circle of friends and family. And Michael Cohen and Hope Hicks and all the other people from Trump Organization giving these unbelievable, well, but totally believable accounts of how things work. And it's all about the money, and it's all about the self-interest. And, with the plans that he's making for another presidency, I know a lot of people can't imagine anything worse than the first Trump presidency, but I think this would be a lot worse, and he'd have a lot more leeway to carry out what he wants to do. And so, the trial really snapped things into perspective, and just the continuing drumbeat of how he's moving his family and friends and loyalists into these positions. And you can stop me if I'm saying too much about this, but the whole challenge with a story like this and anything anyone writes these days is, where do you stop? Because you could go on and on and on talking about the ways in which money and power were the goals and the abuses of the first term, and how much worse it could be in the second term, given the grip on power and the people reporting just to him, with no limits really on their authority, and no limits on the definition of their roles.
Well, how we the thing that keeps coming up is the structure of the Trump organization, his business, and how for being a massive organization, he was still running it almost like a family operation. That there were a limited number of people. He was still making all the big calls. How do you see that kind of perpetuating itself in the structure of the Republican Party? I mean, just in terms of the placement of loyalists, in terms of his own family getting more and more power. What should we be on the lookout there for?
We should have been on the lookout for a lot of things that have already happened, including just the Republican National Committee members just rolling over and saying, okay, fine, your daughter-in-law can be the chair, and your people can be in there, and we can have loyalty oaths, and we can ask them if the 2020 election was legitimate, and it's all about getting people who are never going to object to anything. And I think that that's entirely what's going on now at the Republican Party, even though a few brave members tried to head it off. It just seems like it's a lost cause to me, and frankly, the only thing that I can see disrupting this cycle in the future is some kind of candidate like the Republican counterpart to Barack Obama, somebody who's something completely new, very charismatic, has none of the ethics problems of a Trump or the legal problems of a Trump, and just you know is a chance for renewal of the party and to stop this cycle. I don't see that
That
person. I have no idea who that
yeah,
person is.
that I don't mean to be I don't mean to denigrate that idea. That does feel like wishful thinking because my read on what is happening now is the same read that's I've had for the last 4 or 5 years now, which is that the party is Trump's as long as he is alive. I can't see anybody coming to challenge him, and it's not because of ideology. It's not even because of personality. It's because of Trump's vindictiveness. I mean, he will go after anyone who opposes him in any way and try to destroy them. And again, that kind of calls to mind a lot of the stories we've heard about Trump's, business practices. That really feels like something right out of the boardroom for him.
Right. And so the question in part is what happens after him and whether this has any staying power. And it does seem like some of the children are positioned to carry on the legacy, such as it is, unfortunately. It's unclear if they're as vindictive or can be as charismatic as he is, or whether finally people in Congress or people out in his pockets of support will find that they've had enough and that this is a chance to move on. I'm just hoping that's not sustainable for the long term, but for right now, you're right. My scenario is complete wishful thinking.
Well, I mean, I do. One of the things I think about a lot are the checks on his power and the difference between now and 2016. I mean, back in 2016 to 2020, there were people who were willing to work with him to get stuff done, but also push back against him. And I get the sense that that ability or willingness to push back has more or less collapsed over the last several years here. I don't see anybody in a position of power who is willing to say, no, we shouldn't be supporting a guy who is under trial in several different states for several different reasons. We should not. And instead, what you have, right, are, we keep seeing these lineups of folks going to the courthouse to essentially pay homage to Trump in the hopes that he will pick them to be his vice president.
Right, with those collateral damage being the people they're attacking in the court system and these supposed citizens on the jury. Because I guess if you're from New York City, you're not really an American. I mean, these are, this is incredibly damaging to the fabric of America and to American politics, but it's been going on for what, 9 years, ever since he got into the race the first time. So I'm really, I'm not sure where we go from here. And I think in large part, one of the things that's been so um, distressing is the lack of Republican pushback or the pushback from people who then get voted out of office or who leave and say they'll never. It was a terrible experience. Some of the people from his administration. I don't get the feeling that he's going to have anybody who's going to do any pushback in the next administration. I mean, you read these things like, well, he could fire Jack Smith, the special counsel. He could, you know, decide to pardon himself if there's any convictions. And, maybe people will push back on that. Maybe that's illegal. Maybe that's unethical. But nobody's pushed back so far. The only group, the only organization that has is and is making any headway is the DA of Manhattan. It's just astonishing to me what Trump has gotten away with, including among people like Mitch McConnell, who insisted that the court system would take care of this.
Well, we're going to see. We could, there is a court at work right now, trying to take care of our problem. We'll, I guess this is in the realm of speculation, so don't feel. But I do wonder how much of this is simply how much of Trump's power is simply personality based. If he goes away tomorrow, if he were to pop off the face of the planet and never be seen again. Does the Trump family actually have any sway over the GOP, or is it simple fear of Donald Trump and the voters he has under his control? Because I don't see his base necessarily wanting to fall into line under Donald Trump Jr. I don't think Donald Trump Jr. has the same personal draw or appeal or magnetism that Trump has over the base. I feel like the whole thing kind of collapses that they have built without Trump, or maybe not. I mean, what do you think?
It all really does come down to the people who have been his advance guard, his troops in the fight. And, they're the reason that people won't vote against him in an impeachment trial. They're the reason that people will do exactly what he wants when it comes to, say, a bipartisan border security bill. They don't want threats to their wives, death threats to themselves and their wives on the phone. They don't want to risk their children's safety or anyone in their house's safety. You have to be really um, brave and principled to do what just a few people have done. And I can understand why people don't want to have to deal with this. And people are leaving Congress, because they don't want to have to deal with it. So it's the threats, it's the menace, it's the people who do things like, beat Paul Pelosi with a hammer. I mean, you can say that these are just the unbalanced people, but everybody's listening, and some of them are unbalanced. So the answer to your question is I'm not really sure if anyone's going to have the force of personality that Donald Trump does and the vindictiveness that he does, but whether this group of people who served him kind of turn him into a martyr or a saint or whatever and just keep going because they feel like they're in a cause and a mission and a movement. Well, I wouldn't make any predictions, yes or no.
Yeah, it's nobody wants to try and guess the future here because it doesn't look great no matter what. All right, Jill, thank you for being on today. And the name of your piece is "We Can't Let Trump Run America Like His Business." It would be an autocracy like we've never seen. You can check that out on the Bulwark. Go read it, listen there, sign up at Bulwark Plus, and we'll see you guys again
Thanks,
soon.
Sonny.